After arguing for a while, the abomination suddenly asked, "Can you sew them up?" Matthew couldn't keep up with his train of thought. "What do you mean?" Abomination explained, "If you can sew them up, won't they be together?" The undead fell silent. It was unknown whether it was because of their fear of Abomination or because they were stunned by Abomination's train of thought. Matthew rolled his eyes. It's indeed a solution. However, there is another problem for the Headless Horseman and the Flying Ghost Head. They were picky about the taste of food when they were alive. The Headless Horseman liked to eat sweet food when he was alive, while the Flying Ghost Head liked to eat salty food when she was alive. This time, before he could take the initiative to sow discord, the undead quarreled again. However, this time, they broke the shackles of their race. The Skeleton Party and Zombie Party, which had just been established for less than an hour, disbanded one after another and became the Salty Party and the Sweet Party. Matthew was delighted. This was the ultimate move he had prepared for the Night of the Undead. There were so many undead. It would be too tiring for Matthew to have a heart-to-heart talk with them one by one. Moreover, when he was chatting with an undead, the others would interrupt. He couldn't be silent either. It didn't conform to the principle of in-depth communication between the two parties during the Night of the Undead. The more mature method was for the necromancer to act as the host and guide the undead during discussions and debates. This was not a Matthew original. He learned it from the necromancers in Bayan City. However, Matthew did come up with the debate topics himself. His selection criteria were only one: the more argumentative the topic was, the better. This way, he would probably be able to survive the entire Night of the Undead. Of course, this technique was not omnipotent. If you wanted to use this method to pass the Night of the Undead, you had to have a big brother who could control the situation. This was also the fundamental reason why Matthew was so ingratiating to the abomination. In addition, in terms of chatting topics, the undead actually had many taboos. This was also the reason why Matthew did not wish to speak too much lest he made a verbal mistake. If he said something that made Brother Abomination unhappy, all his previous efforts would be in vain. In such a situation, the necromancers of Bayan City had a method that was close to cheating. They would find a powerful undead before the Night of the Dead. This immortal must be a high-level existence with intelligence like Peggy. They called this kind of undead a middleman. The necromancer would make a deal with the middleman beforehand. The two sides had agreed on a time and place. After the Night of the Undead began, the middleman would stumble into the ceremony site like it was an accident. This was to ensure that nothing would go wrong. How effective was this cheating process? Bayan City's officials even had a service that specialized in renting out middlemen. This was also one of the reasons why Bayan City was able to mass-produce high-level necromancers. However, there was a price to be paid for taking shortcuts. The advancement completed by taking shortcuts would usually only be the weakest grade. Matthew naturally looked down on them. He was confident that he could pass the night beautifully with his gift of the gab. Perhaps it had been too long since the undead had spoken, but they seemed to be very active. Other than Big Brother Abomination, the rest of them were all expressing their opinions noisily. Matthew was much more relaxed because of this. He only needed to control the scene. What you said makes sense, but what if the Headless Horseman is unwilling? I mean, though he was a man and had once had manly features, he is now a ghoul. Miss Flying Ghost Head has a good temper, but she always lacks a sense of security. She can't stand the fact that the Headless Horseman often doesn't return at night. She even suspects that the Headless Horseman actually has a head, but he hides it and uses it to flirt with other flying heads. You're right. The Flying Ghost Head has always been known for its ugly appearance, but are ugly people destined not to get true love? If she really couldn't meet her Mr. Right, couldn't she just wait? What if there is one still waiting for her? Matthew interjected one sentence after another. The debate of the undead was pushed to the climax wave after wave. If it wasn't for Big Brother Abomination's frequent question of "Can't you sew them together?" Matthew could probably make the debate last the whole night. But even so, time passed by without him realizing it. In the heated debate, someone suddenly shouted, "It's dawn!" The undead, who were still arguing fiercely just now, suddenly felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Matthew looked down. The incense in the incense burner had also burned out the last wisp. Almost in an instant, the undead, who had been extremely lively just a moment ago, became stiff as if a force had deprived them of all the wisdom and memories that had been temporarily given to them. The light of dawn shone on the rainforest. The undead returned to their muddle-headed state. One by one, they left Matthew's ritual site. including the abomination. Under the effect of the ritual, they would obediently leave the scene. Matthew watched them leave with relief. Other than the perverted zombie that wanted to assault Matthew earlier. Matthew walked in front of him and tripped him. The latter staggered and fell to the ground, baring his teeth at Matthew. He finally got up. Matthew kicked him to the ground again. Until all the undead disappeared from Matthew's sight. At this moment, the perverted zombie jumped up from the ground and bit Matthew. Matthew did not even blink. In the next second, his body expanded rapidly and instantly turned into a moon bear. Then, he slapped down. Puff. 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 The moon bear slapped the zombie 3 times in a row, turning its sturdy chest into pieces of meat. Then, he twisted his palms around the other party's neck. The head of the perverted zombie was chopped off by Matthew. Ding. It was the sound of a nameplate falling to the ground. Matthew kicked the zombie's head away and slowly turned back. In the next moment, he bent down and picked up the nameplate. It was written on it minus. This zombie is a pervert. Don't get close to it. A very timely reminder. Matthew smiled helplessly. At this moment, Bobo, who was watching from a distance, bounced over. What a unique night. Although I didn't see what I wanted to see, it still left a deep impression on me. I have a question. Matthew said, shoot. So are the headless horseman and the flying ghost head together? Bobo raised her head, her eyes filled with curiosity. No, Matthew replied. Why? Bobo looked a little disappointed. Because the headless horseman has no head, and the flying ghost head has no body. When they meet, they will only brush past each other forever, unless they are sewn together just like how the abomination suggested. Matthew smiled and replied, of course, I made everything up. If undead still crave love, their soul fire must be seriously ill. Prompt, you have completed the advancement ritual, Night of the Undead. You have obtained the advanced profession, Advanced Necromancer. Since the Advanced Necromancer and the Basic Necromancer were of the same origin, the former would be used to replace the latter. Please distribute the experience points. Your level has increased from LV8 to LV12. Your attributes have increased, Intelligence +1, Intuition +1. Your contract slot +2. You have obtained the class characteristic of an Advanced Necromancer, Soul Projection. You have obtained new abilities, Tombstone Crafting and Death Shock. Wave. Your ability, Rotten Sack Mastery, has been upgraded to Rotten Sack Control. Due to your outstanding performance in the Night of the Undead, you will receive the following additional rewards. Your affinity with negative energy has increased slightly. You will receive a new undead summon, random/rank 3-4. A large amount of XP was consumed, and Matthew's level also soared. Jumping from the peak of Tier 2 to the peak of Tier 3 in one breath, his strength instantly rose by a level. The first thing he saw immediately was the increase in his attributes. The additional intelligence would help him learn spells faster and cast spells better. Perception was exactly the attribute that druids needed. It could make people more sensitive and could detect things that ordinary people could not. At the same time, it could also improve the effect of shape-shifting form. In terms of characteristics and abilities, a high-level necromancer would usually obtain one of the 4 main spells. They were Army Summon, Withering Halo Teeth Stone, and Soul Projection. The Army Summoning technique could increase the upper limit of the summoned creatures by about 2 or 3 times. The Withering Halo gave the undead an effect similar to Withering Light, but its overall performance was worse than the latter. The Teeth Stone was a relatively good skill. It was a stone condensed by a necromancer's own mana and negative energy. It could greatly increase the owner's goodwill with the blood race. Most of the necromancers who had obtained the Teeth Stone had embarked on the road to success. After all, the blood race was one of the few undead who had strong individual combat strength, high intelligence and knew how to cooperate. However, these 3 skills dimmed in front of Soul Projection. Soul Projection, your soul can leave your physical body, and your physical body will enter a state of absent-mindedness. In this state, you will obtain the following special properties. Your soul can travel to the nearby world at twice the speed of walking. You will also gain the ability to see through walls and become invisible to mortals. Both your soul and body gain high resistance against physical damage such as slashes and stabs. You can cast a spell in your soul state without the casting action and medium. When the spell is a necromancy spell, you will also gain the ability to cast without materials. You can try to possess any target, but it's best if it's an inanimate object. When the soul is not strong enough, any possession of a living thing can be considered to be a suicidal move. When your soul leaves your body, you will continue to consume your soul energy unless you can return to your body to rest. You can also create some containers that can hold souls and place them around your body as a resting place. However, no matter what, your soul projection time cannot exceed 1 hour, and the maximum distance cannot exceed 70 meters from your physical body. After using the trembling form, you have to return to your physical body in 3 minutes at most. Otherwise, there is a risk of not being able to return. Despite all the limitations, soul projection was still one of the most powerful characteristics that a high-level necromancer could master. Matthew didn't know if it was his good luck or if his performance in the Night of the Undead was too good. This spell was ridiculously powerful whether it was used for reconnaissance, fighting, or scheming. The only spell that could have a similar effect was the level 12 magic soul pot of the same level, but the effect of the magic soul pot was less than 1/5 of the effect of soul projection. Therefore, Matthew was quite satisfied. Moreover, the 2 new abilities were not bad. Tombstone crafting, you can create tombstones for the undead to rest on. Near the tombstones, they can recover faster, absorb negative energy better, and greatly increase their potential loyalty. Undead who rest near the gravestone for a long time will have a lower chance of becoming an elite version of themselves. You can also detonate the gravestone. The latter can be regarded as a unit that can satisfy the conditions of the last dance and corpse explosion at the same time. Death shockwave, you can launch a terrifying negative energy blast wave in a huge fan-shaped area. The blast wave has a powerful knockback and shock effect. Enemies hit by the shock wave will suffer a heavy injury trigger. If the trigger is successful, at least half of their HP will be sucked away. Even if the trigger failed, the person hit by the shock wave would still lose about 1/5 of his health. Can be used twice a day. One of these 2 abilities was a support ability that could improve the treatment of the undead. The other was a raro skill. The range damage provided by the shockwave had always been what Matthew lacked. The spells of the School of Necromancy were extremely complicated, but negative energy had always been known for point-to-point explosions, and there were few. This ability greatly made up for Matthew's shortcomings. His mood became happier. At least I didn't waste a night of talking. The secondary profession of Envoy of Equilibrium and the advancement of the high-level necromancer had greatly increased Matthew's strength. He believed that as long as he was given some time to familiarize himself with his abilities, he could easily kill many Tier 4 enemies, even with his Tier 3 body. After all, in this world, level was only ranked at the end of the 5 major elements of strength. The other 4 elements in Matthew's mind were ranked as follows: domain, network, equipment, including items, ability. The domain was the most important. It was the sprout of the legendary path and the key to the truth of the world. It could also be of great help in a fight. His connections came second. In Matthew's opinion, a problem that could be solved by persuading and convincing people was not a problem. Equipment and items represented wealth, and money could actually solve many problems. Lorraine was a living example. As for ability and level, they were the least important. He roughly skimmed through the detailed descriptions of the various enhancements. Matthew's mood gradually became perturbed. Next. It was a moment that challenged Matthew's luck. Hint: do you wish to summon a new undead contracted creature? The summoning is taking effect. Please wait. Prompt: summon successful. You have obtained a Curse Spectre LV9/Elite mode. When this line of words appeared in front of Matthew, he was more or less disappointed. However, the ghost that appeared next made his eyes light up. She looked like a woman with a very special temperament. She floated out of the negative energy array, and a faint cold air surged over. From top to bottom, Spectral Soul's body was constantly turning into nothingness. Her upper body was very solid. She had big eyes, a straight nose, pale lips, long black hair that reached her shoulders, and a chiffon dress that was tightly wrapped around her waist. Further down, it turned into a faint white light. This ghost's level was not high, but she was very good-looking. Matthew looked at her and found that her charm was actually very average, only 12 points, not even as good as Matthew's. However, she could give people a kind of temperament that was like a spring breeze. Very few undead could give Matthew such a feeling. Alright, luck is always strange. At least she's good for the eyes. That's better than nothing. He thought about it. Matthew glanced at Miss Ghost's interface and saw 2 unusual characteristics. Silence: curse, your ghost cannot communicate with people like a normal ghost. Beauty is strength: curse, your specter can adjust its appearance, minus its charm, in exchange for additional levels and combat power. You can choose between the following 2 adjustments. Manual adjustment. Every day at 3 a.m., you can adjust the ghost's charm value once. In the following day, she will fight with a fixed appearance, charm, and combat power. Self-adjustment. Return the power to adjust the appearance to the ghost itself. She will be grateful to you for this, but she may not adjust the appearance and combat power to your satisfaction. You can now try to adjust the appearance and combat power of the ghost, limited to the next 30 minutes. There's such a curse. Matthew's interest was piqued. Matthew, this sister is so beautiful. Bobo exclaimed as he looked at the new specter. Is she your summoned creature? I'll use the big bomb in my backpack to exchange for it. Matthew smiled. Summoned creatures can't be casually exchanged. In the next second, he began to adjust the ghost's charm. Hint, you have used beauty as strength on the specter. The specters. Charm 2 current level 10, level +1 current level 10. Why did she become ugly? Bobo's gaze was very vicious. Did I see wrongly just now? Matthew, I'll only exchange a small bomb for her now. Matthew didn't say anything. 2 points of charm for a profession level. Let me see your limits. Hint, Ghost's Charm 12 current 2, level +6 current LV 16. Your ghost has obtained a new ability. Mommy. There's a ghost. Before Matthew could check on Miss Ghost's new ability, he was disturbed by Bobo's screams. He turned around and looked at Bobo with amusement. Is it that exaggerated? Matthew, tell her not to come over. Bobo retreated nervously. If you come any closer, I'll really throw a bomb. Ghosts are afraid of my bomb too. This time, she actually didn't mention anything about the exchange. Matthew was a little curious about her reaction, so he turned around and said, Bobo, it's not good to judge a book by its cover, wow? Matthew only glanced at Miss Spectral Soul's current appearance and could not say anything. It was an ugliness that exceeded the common understanding of the world. Words could not describe it. This was probably what gods and ghosts hated. Pa. At this moment, a few birds flew over their heads, and a few bird droppings landed gracefully. Fortunately, the ghost did not have a physical body. The bird droppings passed through her head and landed on the ground. Matthew also dodged it with his high perception. Only Bobo's helmet was left with a lump. Matthew. What happened? Bobo was still immersed in the huge shock brought by the collapse of Miss Specter's beauty. Matthew quietly changed his gloves and touched her head, pretending that nothing had happened. Otherwise, she would probably shout and blow up the bird's nest. Is this the terrifying part of having -2 charm? Even a feathered beast couldn't help but be disgusted. It was also Matthew's first time encountering a creature with negative charm. Very quickly, a faint sense of grievance came from the death contract. Matthew immediately changed her charm back. Miss Spectral Soul returned to her beautiful appearance. Matthew thought for a moment. In the end, he still handed the right to make adjustments to Miss Spectral Soul. Although she was already undead and her looks were no longer important, Matthew still felt that such manipulation was too cruel to her. Originally, his expectations of the Spectral Soul were low. But actually, she could manipulate her attributes for strength. This was already beyond his expectations. Moreover, there was another benefit to giving the right to Miss Spectral Soul. The exchange of charm and combat power was not restricted by the 3 a.m. limit. It could be adjusted at any time. This greatly increased her danger level. Who would have thought that a level 9 specter would suddenly become a level 16 specter? Who placed this curse on her? It was a pity that the summoned creatures for advancement or mission rewards were randomly grabbed from the negative energy plane. Miss Ghost could not speak, so he had no way to know her story for the time being. Specters should have their own names too. Seeing how you're floating here and there, I'll call you Drifter. Hint, naming successful. The loyalty of the cursed ghost to you has increased to 85. You have returned the right to adjust beauty as strength to Drifter. The Drifter is very grateful to you. The Drifter's loyalty has increased to 95. The Drifter has shared her ability, wall phasing technique, with you. Wall phasing technique, weakened. You can turn your body into a ghost through a preparatory action and pass through a physical wall with a thickness of up to 1.2 meters. Warning minus. When you pass through the wall, your speed will be reduced to 1/3 of your usual speed. If you are attacked or initiate an attack while you are passing through the wall, you will lose your ghostly form. During the process of passing through the wall, if you touch a living thing, you will also lose your ghostly form. Every time you practice passing through walls, please prepare an escape spell in advance or ask a companion to assist you. Every year, there are mages who encounter strange bullying during the process of practicing passing through walls. The wall phasing spell was indeed a very classic spell. Even though they knew it was dangerous, there were still countless people who wanted to learn it. With a large base, there were naturally many who were stuck in the wall. Matthew had heard Ronan tell him a joke. If a mage asks you to be his partner when he practices the wall passing spell, it means that he trusts you without a doubt. However, it's also possible that he's seducing you. Matthew, who had read countless adult films in his previous life, naturally understood it in seconds. At that time, he was still amazed by the degree of open-mindedness of the mages in this world. Later, he realized that no matter which world it was, humans were actually the same. Specters were different from zombies and skeletons. Specters were more prone to sun damage than the other two. Therefore, Matthew did not plan to let the drifter come out during the day. Fortunately, ghosts had their own advantages, and they could possess people. Matthew thought for a moment and decided to let the drifter attach herself to his backpack. That way, when something happened, he could just tap his backpack, and the drifter would naturally appear. When she had nothing to do, it was reasonable to let her stay in the luggage and help clean up and tidy up the inventory occasionally, right? Under Bobo's curious gaze, the drifter turned into a wisp of white smoke and flew into Matthew's luggage. There was another important choice for Matthew. That was, should he level up again? That's right, after leveling up to level 12 in one go, Matthew still had surplus XP. It was different from Tier 2 to Tier 3. Tier 3 to Tier 4 did not require an advancement ceremony. Once people had enough XP, they would rush past the leveling process. However, Matthew was different. He rushed a little too fast. He tried to use the temperance domain to judge this matter and soon got an answer. Note, due to your leveling speed from level 5 to level 12 in the past 6 months, as well as your spell learning status, it is recommended that you take a rest period of at least 8 months. The resting period meant that he would not level up for the next 8 months. Matthew could understand this. The level was only a part of strength. Spells and abilities that matched it were equally important. Matthew had stayed at Tier 2 for a long time. Although some spells were learned in a hurry and his foundation was not too stable, he could still make do with them. However, Tier 3 was different. He had not learned a single Tier 3 spell. If he advanced to Tier 4 in one go and then went back to learn Tier 3 spells, he might fall into the trap of the law of pride. High-level spellcasters would often be careless when learning low-level spells. Many times, a high-level spellcaster would not be able to comprehend the essence of spells of the same level as a low-level spellcaster. Matthew decided to adopt the suggestion of an 8-month resting period. First, he had to learn the spells that he needed to learn. At the very least, he could not proceed without a stable foundation. At the same time, he also decided to plant more trees. This was because Matthew realized that the light spots in the undead domain had greatly countered the light spots in the nature domain. The former was about 2/3, while the latter was only 1/3. This meant that Matthew's exploration progress in the undead domain had been faster. Matthew was consciously balancing the two. Not long after daybreak, Lumiere appeared beside the bitter water swamp. Matthew had not gone far. He imagined that Lumiere would return soon. In fact, Matthew felt that Lumiere had returned to the tribe yesterday partly because he was concerned about the tribe and partly because he had chosen to avoid the Night of the Undead. The future king of the rainforest actually had a high EQ. He could roughly guess what would happen during the Night of the Undead. As a Django, he would definitely not feel good seeing the abomination sown from the corpses of his compatriots, and it was not convenient for him to destroy Matthew's advancement ceremony. Therefore, leaving in time was the best choice. This move made Matthew's impression of Lumiere increase by a large margin. When Lumiere saw Matthew, his expression was very serious. I went back and asked the people in the tribe. In the past 2 days, a large number of outsiders suddenly appeared around the rainforest. These people came very strangely. It happened in the past 2 days. Moreover, they didn't seem to be unfamiliar with the rainforest at all. It was as if they had done their homework in advance. My tribe and some tribes in the southwest had a few conflicts with these people, but they didn't gain much of an advantage. This is very unusual. After all, the rainforest is supposed to be our home ground. Matthew wanted to ask more. Suddenly, Lumiere turned to look at the other side of the forest. Matthew also sensed a group of people approaching. Lumiere strode forward, shouting something loudly in the native language. Soon, some figures emerged from the rainforest. They were wearing clothes woven from leaves, holding spears in their hands, and had sharp teeth sewn into their mouths. Their eyes were extremely fierce. Matthew noticed that there were a few strong men among the natives. They carried a few human heads on their backs. One of the heads had not dried up, and blood was still flowing out of the stump. It's the headhunter tribe in the southwest. Be careful. They're very extreme and resist any outsiders. Lumiere did not turn around. He was still negotiating with the other party, but his words still accurately floated into Matthew and Bobo's ears. No one knew how he did it. Lumiere and the headhunters talked for a long time. The latter stared fiercely at Matthew and Bobo, pointing at them as if they were unwilling to let them go. In the middle of the stalemate, Matthew asked, "What are they talking about?" Lumiere replied, "They said that there are people cutting down the rainforest in the southwest. Many people. Those people have also built factories in the rainforest. I don't know." They said it very vaguely. "I don't know if it's a factory or a logging farm. In short, it's a large building surrounded by fences. The sound of machinery is always coming from inside." Damn it, what was going? Matthew wanted to ask again. Suddenly, a headhunter gave a signal. In a nearby bush that wasn't too dense, a little boy who looked to be only 12 or 13 years old suddenly raised his blow dart. Whoosh! A thin dart went straight for Matthew's chest. Fortunately, Matthew was very vigilant. The moment the two sides met, he used his perception to sweep through the surroundings to look for hiding spots. At that moment, he was about to dodge when a short figure suddenly stood in front of him and jumped. Bang! The blow dart collided with Bobo's helmet, changing its course. With a whoosh, it struck the tree bark at the side, and a green liquid flowed out of the arrowhead. Matthew was a little angry. Bobo had already made her move. The glove on her right hand flashed with a blue light as she threw an uppercut into the air. Puff! The child hiding in the bushes seemed to have been hit in the abdomen by a huge force. He was sent flying. Not only did he fall out of the bushes, but he also hung on a tall branch in the end, screaming endlessly. "Wait, stop!" Lumiere shouted. He turned around and said to Bobo and Matthew, "Step back a little more. Trust me and let me handle it, okay?" His eyes were pleading. Bobo was about to shake her head in refuse. Matthew grabbed her helmet and walked away. A hint of gratitude flashed in Lumiere's eyes. Then, he walked toward the group of headhunters alone. The aura of the child of the rainforest was unleashed. No headhunter dared to stop him. "Lumiere, what are you doing?" a headhunter asked. "You shouldn't have done that." There was a hint of pity in Lumiere's eyes. The headhunters questioned, "Are you going to kill our child for an outsider?" Lumiere leapt onto the branch like a cheetah and gently lifted the child from the tree. The child's mouth was constantly bleeding, and his eyes were filled with fear. "There are no children in the rainforest, only hunters and prey." Lumiere's tone was extremely calm. "I know what you're thinking. You think I won't do anything to a child, but you're wrong. I have warned you many times that they are my friends, but you still crossed my bottom line. This is really too stupid." A headhunter with a vicious face scolded angrily, "I don't believe you dare to kill him." Crack! Lumi and Ree calmly twisted the child's neck. The headhunter's cries of shock and pain could be heard in the forest. Lumiere slowly stood up, his hands trembling slightly. "You will never become the king of the rainforest. You can't be our king. You're a traitor." The headhunters roared in grief and indignation. Lumiere turned around resolutely. "Whether or not I can become the king of the rainforest is not up to you. I want to become the king of the rainforest precisely because I hope that one day, a child like him won't have to hold a blowdart and kill people in secret. I want to change the living environment of all the Jangos. I want us to live a stable life. I want us to eat, live well, wear warm clothes, and avoid killing as much as possible. And if we want to achieve all of this, we can't blindly reject all outsiders. They are the key for us to leave the rainforest and enter the world. I don't expect you idiots to understand my ambition, but if you continue to be stubborn and obstruct me, I don't mind twisting your heads off, I mean, all of you." After saying this, he stopped and turned to the headhunters again. "Now, tell me everything you know about those outsiders. Please don't get it wrong. I'm not begging you for anything, and I'm ordering you to tell me the truth." 10 minutes later, Lumiere returned to the two of them with a calm expression. He only said, "He's dead." Matthew patted him on the shoulder. The latter quickly said, "According to the clues provided by the headhunter tribe, the people who cut down trees in the southwest of the rainforest may be related to the Dragon Lich sect. The highest leader of the Dragon Lich sect is a powerful priest. It is said that he has a close relationship with a Dragon Lich who has already advanced to a demigod. Before this, they had been active in the desert. For some reason, they suddenly began to invade the rainforest." Matthew nodded. When Lumiere was communicating with the headhunter, he had already thought of some clues, but he still needed some evidence. So Matthew asked, "Do you know where the Dinosauruses and the winged dragon wind god's original territory was?" Lumiere was stunned. "It's the west, near the headhunter tribe." "What do you mean?" Matthew had an expression of "I knew it." "The ecological state is the reason." It seemed that the people of the Dragon Lich sect had been keeping a close eye on the rainforest. They might have had plans for the rainforest for a long time, but due to the existence of the two lords, Dinosauruses and the winged dragon wind god, especially the Dinosauruses, their plans could not be implemented. After your advancement ritual, the Dinosauruses died, and there was a vacancy in the ecological niche. It is impossible for the rainforest to give birth to a second overlord with similar intimidation abilities in the short term. In comparison, you might be stronger than Dinosauruses, but in terms of individual strength, you can't cover as much territory as it. You fought with Dinosauruses for a long time, which must have attracted their attention. When Dinosauruses died, the Dragon Lich sect could not wait to take action. Judging from the timeline, this speculation was also valid. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come in right after you left. Bobo asked. "What about the Sandstorm Bandits and the Order of Calamity?" Lumiere answered first. "The people from the Order of Calamity are from the Underdark. I know that there are several entrances to the underground cities near the rainforest. Some Knoll used to occupy them, but they disappeared later." Matthew actually had many doubts about the Sandstorm Bandits. He was about to explain this point. Suddenly, a little flying squirrel jumped down from the tree behind the three of them. His voice sounded extremely excited. "Ha ha ha, Lord Matthew, great news." A black-robed man who had appeared out of nowhere had brought more than 10 ground fire dragons and a group of dragon blood warriors with him. They were currently attacking the Black Banyan Dream Realm. Lord Suya is struggling to hold on, but the situation is not good. I think she will soon step down. The next soul of the rainforest is none other than me, Hoodlum. What do you think? Lord Matthew. The Black Banyan Dream Realm was under attack. Matthew and Lumiere looked at each other, and their expressions became extremely serious. Are you sure it's the Earth Fire Dragon and the Dragon Blood Warrior? Matthew asked. Hoodlum nodded. There's no doubt about it. However, the bloodline of those ground fire dragons isn't very pure. Their bodies are fat, and their hands are short. It's obvious that they don't usually exercise, unlike me. I fly around all day, which is why I can cultivate a good figure. As he spoke, he confidently showed off his short figure. That's the Dragon Lich sect. Lumiere blurted out. Matthew nodded. He didn't know much about the Dragon Lich cult. He only knew that this cult was widely active in the remote areas of the Anger continent. The spiritual totem of the Dragon Lich sect was the Dragon of the Dead. Ariana. It was said that she was the only god who escaped the ascension of the Heavenly Palace. The reason was that Ariana had never been liked by the gods of the Heavenly Palace and had never been to the Heavenly Palace. When the Calamity Mage descended, Ariana happened to hold a feigned death ritual that happened once every 900 years, which actually hid her from the omniscient Calamity Mage. In the end, this expert, who had been apotheosized by the Dragon Lich sect, became the only god who survived the ascension of Heavenly Palace. However, Ariana was very smart. After she recovered from her fake death, she didn't act out. Instead, she hid in her demi-plane and kept faking her death to avoid the rules set by the Calamity Mage. During this period, she had also reached a tacit agreement with the people of the Alliance of Seven Saints. Both sides would mind their own business. Even though Ariana herself was so low-key, the people who worshipped her were extremely crazy. The believers of the Dragon Lich cult regarded him as the only true god and worshipped and prayed day and night, even though Ariana had never responded to their prayers. If that was all, the Dragon Lich cult could not be called a cult. At most, they were a little paranoid and fanatical. However, the real purpose of this sect's continuous activities was to create one Dragon Lich after another. This naturally evil creature would cause devastating damage to the world of the living in most cases. Therefore, the Dragon Lich cult was on the list of evil sects in the Seven Saint Alliance, and every member of the Dragon Lich cult was wanted. Ronan used to joke with Matthew and said, "When I was young, I had no money to spend. Before I was strong enough to plunder the dragons and demons at will, I often went to the believers of the Dragon Lich cult to withdraw money. Their bounties can feed a mage quite nicely." It was common for the followers of the Dragon Lich cult to be rich. After all, this group of people was not afraid of death. They frequently went to dragon nests or places that were suspected to be dragon tombs. If they did not die, they could obtain a huge sum of wealth. Of course, there were many dead believers of the Dragon Lich cult. However, those who survived were all extremely rich. But the question is, how did they do it? So you wouldn't be stupid enough to open the Black Banyan dream to the people of the Dragon Lich cult, right? Matthew asked, puzzled. Hoodlum replied, that's because the black-robed man has a semi-divine artifact in his hands. It sounds very powerful. It's called the Book of Blasphemy or something. Anyway, that's what Lord Suya said. Matthew reacted. So Suya asked you to come over. Hoodlum placed his hands on his hips and straightened his chest. His white chest hair was very cute. He said proudly. Yes, she sent me for help, but she had no idea that because of her brutal rule, we were no longer her loyal subjects. When Lady Suya passed away, the position of the soul of the rainforest would be empty. Who would be the next soul of the rainforest? What do you think of me? Matthew. You will support me, right? And you, Lumiere. At this point, he seemed to suddenly realize Lumiere's existence. Hence, he coughed heavily and pretended to imitate Suya's tone. I trust that you will not make the wrong choice, Lumiere. However, it was too late. Lumiere looked at Matthew in shock. You know each other. Has it always been like this in front of you? Matthew waved his hand. None of this is important. The key now is that we have to enter the Black Banyan Dream Realm as soon as possible. Hearing this, Lumiere did not ask further. Matthew looked at Hoodlum. Is there any way to bring us into the Black Banyan Dream Realm? Hoodlum spread out his hands. I have no idea. There is nothing I can do. Unless you have some kind of divine artifact or semi-divine artifact on you that can bypass Lord Suya and directly open the door to Black Banyan's dream realm. Suya asked you to call for help, but she didn't tell you the way to enter the Black Banyan dream realm. Matthew felt that his intelligence had been insulted. Hence, his gaze became unfriendly. I hope you are telling the truth. As he said that, Soldier's figure suddenly appeared from the dark. The two short knives rubbed against each other, making a tooth-numbing sound as he approached the flying squirrel. However, someone was faster. A wisp of white smoke flew out of Matthew's luggage, and an extremely ugly face suddenly appeared in front of the little flying squirrel, baring her fangs and brandishing her claws at him. Mommy. I lied. Hoodlum was scared witless. Matthew couldn't help but kick his butt and urged him impolitely. Lead the way. 5 minutes later, in the depths of the rainforest, under a thick black banyan tree. Do you see the wall of trees on the inner wall of the banyan tree? Walk over, place your hands on the tree wall, and recite nature's respect to enter the Black Banyan's dream realm. This is one of the few nodes in the material world that can connect to the Black Banyan's dream realm. You must not tell others. Hoodlum said loudly. Matthew glanced at the birds flying over his head, the pythons coiled on the branches, and the toads crouching under the tree. He did not say anything but turned around and looked down at Bobo. Are you sure you want to go with us? Actually, you don't know me anything anymore. Bobo snorted softly. Of course, we don't know each other anything. The rainforest here is stuffy and hot, and I can't stay any longer. However, since the enemy is the Dragon Lich sect, I have to follow. The Dragon Lich sect has done many evil things in the Gold Coast and the desert. The Huo sisters tried to stop them, but they suffered heavy casualties. It's destiny for me to bump into them this time. Matthew reminded her, but in here, you must not use bombs or create any degree of explosion. Do you understand? He wasn't trying to make things difficult for Bobo. The Black Banyan dreamscape was unlike the material world. It was too fragile, and any energy field fluctuation could take hundreds of years to repair. The Dragon Lich sect attacking the Black Banyan's dream would cause some damage already. Matthew did not want to add to it. Bobo's eyes widened. I can't do this or that. Have I returned to Cyber Dragon? But don't worry, other than bombs, I have 1,000 other ways to deal with the cultists of the Dragon Lich sect. As she spoke, she gently waved the boxing gloves on her hand. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Matthew was relieved. The group of people passed through the tree walls of the old Black Banyan tree in turn. After a short period of discomfort, the forest of the Black Banyan dream instantly appeared in front of Matthew. However, in the next second, he saw a raging fire trying to ignite the banyan tree forest. It's the ground fire dragon. Hoodlum reminded. At this moment, these words appeared in front of Matthew's eyes. Hint, you have encountered a group of earth fire dragons, level 11/vigorous life. New mission options. Mission title, Rainforest is also a forest, Black Banyan is also a tree. Mission description, protect the Black Banyan dream world and the forest. Kill or expel the people of the Dragon Lich sect. Quest reward, depending on your choice, a random reward of druid spells or abilities of different levels. Matthew was overjoyed when he saw this. He had wanted to help Suya even if there was no reward. As a true necromancer, how could he just watch the dragon lich sect stir up trouble in the sacred land of nature? Moreover, now that there was a reward, Matthew was even more motivated. He looked over. In the forest in front of them, a group of ground fire dragons were scattered and spewing fire at various parts of the banyan tree forest. Their flames weren't very powerful, but there were enough of them. The banyan forest had inherited the characteristics of the rainforest. It was relatively moist and wasn't that conducive to fire. However, over time, it would still be ignited. So Matthew prepared to deal with this group of fire dragons first. At this moment, Lumiere suddenly said to Matthew, "I'm afraid I have to leave first. I'm very worried about Lady Suya's safety." As he spoke, he ran towards the throne without looking back. Matthew did not stop him because he could understand Lumiere's actions. The latter's power came from Suya, from the rainforest, and part of his legendary path also came from this. This was the tragedy of the jungle natives. The limitations of his birth meant that Lumiere had no other path to take. Only by serving the soul of the rainforest could he have the opportunity to walk his own legendary path. It was good to let him go first. In fact, Matthew himself was a little worried about Suya. Although the soul of the rainforest was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws in front of him, once she lost the protection of the Black Banyan Dream, she was just a small nature soul. At most, her level was higher than Ella's. After he saw Lumiere off, Matthew made his move. He took a step forward and waved his hands. His body immediately expanded, and his wings spread out to more than 10 meters long. A terrifying airflow rose from under his body. With a light push, the scenery in front of him quickly retreated. With a whoosh, he shot into the clouds. Shapeshifting form, winged dragon wind god. The airflow in the sky was disturbed. Matthew flew above the banyan forest in a carefree manner, and the scenery below was unobstructed. In the next moment, he suddenly lowered his altitude and dived down, stopping in an instant. Then, the instinct engraved in his bloodline was activated. The winged dragon wind god's claws reached down, and when it flew up again, there was an angry ground fire dragon on its claws. The wind blew, and the air current rose. Matthew grabbed the fire dragon and continued to climb. After a few seconds, he was already hundreds of meters in the air. He loosened his grip. The earth fire dragon fell down while smoking. Soon, a smear of bright tomato sauce was left on the fast land. The earth fire dragon was a monster with thick skin and flesh. If Matthew fought it normally, it would definitely take a lot of time. This monster was more like a fat spider with a fire-breathing head than a dragon. Their bodies were abnormally fat, bulging like spiders. Their limbs were short, and their bellies crawled on the ground. The only advantage was that it could continuously spit fire and had an amazing defense. Fortunately, I found the skill to deal with them. I wonder where the Dragon Lich sect got such a monster. Matthew hated the monsters in front of him from an aesthetic point of view, even Big Brother Abomination was cuter than them. Then, he tried a few more air raids. However, after the first ground fire dragon's lesson, the remaining monsters were actually on guard. They all leaned towards the nearest banyan tree, using its thick and large branches to cover themselves. Matthew didn't rush forward because of his limited vision. He just hovered on the top of the tree, quietly waiting for his companions to arrive. Very quickly, a short shadow quickly ran over from the forest. Matthew took some time to observe and found that Bobo's movements were a little stiff. Every step she took was especially large. Instead of saying that she was running, it was more like a rabbit jumping. He guessed that it was because her speed was completely dependent on her boots that were emitting blue light. She couldn't fine-tune every detail of her body when she was running. She could only reduce the error rate by increasing the range and reducing the frequency. To be honest, seeing her jump all the way, Matthew was really worried that she would fall and end up in the mud in the next second. But in the end, she still successfully rushed to the front of the fire dragons. In the next second, Bobo waved her blue gloves. "Matthew, look at my uppercut." Puff. The blue flames flickered intensely. And ground fire dragon that was watching the show from behind a tree suddenly felt a pain in its stomach. Its chubby body was sent flying by the hammer. It involuntarily flew up a few meters, and just as it was about to return to the embrace of the earth, a black shadow quickly flew over its head. Good fist technique. Matthew praised loudly in the air. A few seconds later, he brought the ground fire dragon to heaven. However, at this moment, the arcane machinist's shout came from below. "Matthew, can you hurry up? Matthew looked down. Good heavens. Bobo was moving in and out of the group of fire dragons. Fire dragons were sent flying by her hammer. It wasn't as if the monsters didn't put up any resistance, but their flames were completely ineffective against Bobo's armor. A thick glass visor had also descended from her face, providing an all-rounded defense. What a powerful armor. I wonder if I can ask her to help me customize a set. Just as this thought flashed across his mind, Matthew rushed down, grabbed a floating fire dragon, and flew into the sky. Just like that. Bobo punched wildly on the ground. Matthew went up and down in the air. A few minutes later, this group of earth fire dragons were all smashed to death. There were 2 more at the edge who tried to escape, but they were killed by Soldier. However, Matthew also noticed that Soldier's efficiency in killing the ground fire dragon wasn't very high. Perhaps it was because the latter's body fat was too thick and Soldier's knife was too short. After killing this group of fire dragons, Matthew received a new message. Hint, you have killed 16 ground fire dragons, relieving the threat of fire in the Black Banyan dream world. You have received the reward spell, Divine Guidance. Divine Guidance, cantrip. If a creature is willing, you can touch its forehead with your hand and grant it a Divine Guidance. In the next 3 minutes, the creature's chances of passing one attribute check will be greatly increased. Matthew was delighted. Even though this was the lowest level cantrip, it was a divine skill for druids. Whether it was in daily life or in battle, attribute checks were very important. For example, Matthew met a fat tiger. The latter used to be an expert at climbing trees, but due to a lack of self-discipline, it gradually lost the ability to climb trees. Under normal circumstances, the fat tiger would fall every time it climbed a tree. This was because he couldn't pass the agility check required for climbing. At this moment, he asked Matthew to guide him. The fat tiger would be able to climb the tree happily in the next 3 minutes. Divine Guidance had similar effects in other fields. For example, when bargaining with others. The other party might have been reluctant to compromise on the price because you were ugly, but now, because of your bargaining technique, the other party's charm check would be satisfied. In the end, the deal would be negotiated successfully. In short, Divine Guidance was a good skill to have. Then, on the way to the throne, Matthew and Bobo used the same trick again. They cooperated perfectly and cleanly killed 2 groups of fire dragons. The reward for Matthew was 2 more cantrips. Oak Staff skill, you can infuse the power of nature into a short or long staff in your hand. For a period when you hold the weapon and engage in melee attacks, you can use your casting key attribute to replace your strength value to perform an attack check. Water manipulation, you can change or manipulate up to 5 cubic feet of water to a certain extent. It couldn't be compared to the Divine Guidance technique, but it was better than nothing. After killing the 3rd group of earth fire dragons, the 2 of them were already very close to the throne. Matthew flew in the air to check on the situation first, but he realized that the believers of the Dragon Lich sect who had originally surrounded the throne were actually showing signs of retreating. He didn't see Suya at first. He saw Lumiere chasing after the enemies near the throne like a god descending from the heavens. His hands seemed to be the sharpest claws in the world. No matter how powerful the enemy was, he could always find the softest part of the enemy's body and tear them apart. In Matthew's eyes, Lumiere's fighting style was extremely brutal, but it was also pleasing to the eye. The winged dragon wind god hovered on the throne for a while. Suddenly, he found traces of Suya on the huge banyan tree branch above his head. She seemed to be chasing after someone anxiously. Matthew focused his eyes. In front of Suya, there was a black-robed man who was hugging a green branch and running while fighting. Warning, you have encountered the 3rd priest of the Dragon Lich sect. Blinken level 20 advanced necromancer. Blinken's domain, dragon/dragonlich/undead. A half-legend. Matthew's eyelids twitched. I shouldn't run. I need to seize the right opportunity. Matthew adjusted the airflow under his wings and was patiently looking for an opportunity. At this moment, Lumiere suddenly charged out from the crowd near the throne and pounced on the black-robed man. Puff. However, what he saw was only an illusion. In the next moment, Matthew once again captured the black-robed man's whereabouts from the air. He had already teleported to the center of the Dragon Lich sect's believers. Retreat. The black-robed man ordered. A huge teleportation gate appeared behind him. The nearby Dragon Lich cult believers, dragon blood warriors, and a few clumsy fire dragons quickly walked into the black gate. The enemies retreated like the tide. Even Black Robe himself stepped into the portal. Stop him. He stole the verdant branch. Suya could not help but exclaim in shock. However, it was this voice that made the black-robed man retract his foot. He turned around angrily and pointed his staff at Suya. Idiot woman. I snatched it, not stole it. I did not steal anything, understand? I won't allow a person like you to live in this world. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man suddenly chanted an incantation that was clearly a double acceleration spell. Quickly dodge. At that moment, even Matthew, who was in the air, felt great danger. A gray ball of light shot out from the tip of the staff. The black-robed man sneered after he finished casting the spell. He no longer lingered and turned around to step into the door. The speed of the gray ball was simply too fast, and in the blink of an eye, it had already reached Suya's chest. Lumiere, who was very close to her, jumped over to help block it, but he brushed past the gray ball. Suya's small face instantly turned pale. In the next second, silently, the gray ball quickly entered a palm-sized body. Suya's eyes widened. A voice slowly sounded in her ear. Now, Lord Suya should be able to remember me. 3 years ago, I was chased by a stinky bat, and it was Lord Suya who saved. For the past 3 years, I have been working hard and doing all kinds of outrageous things, hoping that you will remember me. Please remember my name. Lord Matthew gave it to me. I actually like it very much. Lord Suya, my name is. Hint, your companion hoodlum has been hit by the Law of Death Tier 5 spell. The instant death check has taken effect. Hoodlum is dead. Beside the throne, Matthew quickly descended and transformed into his human form. He bent down and picked up the cold and stiff body of the flying squirrel with both hands. Under the erosion of the massive negative energy, its brown-white fur had completely turned grayish-black. His name is Hoodlum. I gave him that name. Matthew was silent for a moment before he brought the little flying squirrel in front of Suya. He had already guessed Hoodlum's respect for Suya. After all, no matter how ridiculous Hoodlum's words were, he would never forget to use honorifics when he mentioned Suya. Matthew even suspected that Hoodlum was a double agent sent by Suya. He felt a little regretful. Hence, his gaze towards Suya was filled with sorrow. However, in the next second, Suya actually chuckled. Did that performance really touch you? This damned flying squirrel. When did he learn how to manipulate emotions like humans? Matthew was stunned for a moment, not understanding what was going on. Suya explained. In order to persuade the animals to resist the invasion of the Dragon Lich sect, I promised them that if they died in the Black Banyan Dream, no matter how much time and effort it took, I would resurrect them one by one, at least in the form of a low-level nature soul. This guy knows what he's doing. As she spoke, she waved her hand. A white light emerged from the flying squirrel's corpse and slowly entered the throne behind her. The white light flew past Matthew. Matthew could still vaguely see Hoodlum's soul winking at him. Hint, the soul of the rainforest, Suya, has held a promotion ceremony for your companion Hoodlum, the soul of nature, spirit form / intermediate. It will return to the Black Banyan Dream in its spirit form within 30 days and receive a certain amount of nature's blessings and the care of the soul of the rainforest. This brat. Matthew didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he quickly suppressed this emotion because there were still a large number of Dragon Lich sect believers retreating near the black door. I still have something. Suya's words were interrupted by Matthew. Wait. After saying that, he transformed into the winged dragon wind god again and flew toward the black door. The winged dragon wind god flew past the black door. A strong wind suddenly swept up and a few Dragon Lich sect believers who almost ran through the door were swept out. Whoosh. 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 With the portal as the center, a small group of people fell away from the black door. Matthew didn't hesitate at all. He flapped his wings wildly, and the terrifying airflow formed a huge vortex near the black door. Violent wind. The believers of the Dragon Lich sect fell like dominoes. It looked like a mess below. Matthew was about to start harvesting when many of the fallen believers cried out in surprise. Then, banging sounds rang out one after another. Matthew focused his eyes and saw that the cultists had turned into puddles of mist, weakly falling on the ground. As the scale of the gale continued to expand, more cultists were swept in, and more water stains appeared on the ground. Matthew finally realized where these Dragon Lich sect disciples came from. Water Mirror Image, military version. This was a spell that was at least level 4, and only those with the ability Army Spell Specialization had the chance to cast it. Matthew had a higher opinion of the black-robed Blinken strength, Law of Death, and Army Spell Specialization. He is at least at a hero level. In fact, Law of Death was a terrifying spell. The caster could grab someone and kill them. One had to know that this was a tier 5 spell. This was the power of instant death spells. Matthew was more concerned about the army spell that Blinken had mastered. No one was willing to cultivate this kind of spell. After all, it was time-consuming and troublesome to study it unless he had a well-trained army under him. After the mirror images were destroyed one by one, Matthew estimated that there were less than 100 Dragon Lich cult believers attacking the dream realm of the Black Banyan Tree. Because there were only 12 people left to cover the rear. From their panicked expressions, they probably didn't know that their companions were just mirror images. And they were the cannon fodder that had been sacrificed. That's why Blinken didn't plan to attack the Black Banyan Dream Realm from the start. He was just bluffing. His real target was probably the verdant branch that Suya mentioned. Matthew understood. After the 12 dragon worship cult believers lost the cover of the mirror image, they quickly became the targets for the winged dragon wind god to practice diving and catching people. After a series of screams, the black door slowly disappeared. There was more ketchup on the ground. Matthew, who was hovering in the air, was still not satisfied. He scouted with all his might for a while, and sure enough, he found 2 groups of fire dragons in the banyan forest to the east of the throne. And Bobo was currently attacking them with a heavy fist. In the next second, the winged dragon wind god let out a long cry of joy and charged forward with a strong gust of wind. Bobo, hold on. I'm coming. On the throne in the distance, Suya was staring into the distance. He seems to hate these Dragon Lich cult believers. Is it because he cares about me? From time to time, a hint of pride flashed across her eyes. However, she was completely unaware that Lumiere, who was covered in blood, was observing the soul of the rainforest and the winged dragon wind god with a complicated gaze. His expression was very distorted, with confusion, unhappiness, and even more confusion. In the end, all his emotions were restrained. Lumiere nodded thoughtfully. At that moment, he seemed to understand something. Hint, you have killed 12 Dragon Lich cult believers and resolved the crisis in the Black Banyan Dream. You have killed 28 ground fire dragons and resolved the fire crisis in the Banyan Tree Forest. You have received the reward spell, Water Creation, and spell, Food Purification. Water Creation, you can create up to 4 liters of water in an open container. Or, the same amount of water could be evenly scattered in an area of up to 10 cubic meters in a very small-scale rainfall. It could be used to extinguish flames and water plants. You can use Water Creation 3 times per day. Food Purification, you can purify a non-magic food, removing all toxins and diseases from it. Otherwise, why was it said that druids were the most suitable class for transmigrators? Even if you came here penniless. When you were hungry, you could pick some berries from the bushes. When you were thirsty, you could make water appear out of thin air. If you were afraid of eating unclean things and had diarrhea, you could still use Food Purification. If he didn't have money to buy weapons, he could just pick up a small branch on the ground and apply the oak staff technique on it. In the shapeshifting form, one could enter the city to work and act cute, while in the wild, one could communicate with animals. It was indeed the most suitable profession for poor transmigrators. Even now, Matthew didn't think that these 2 spells were useless. If he had mastered Food Purification in Marsh City, he would not have gone to the toilet 7 or 8 times a night. After killing all the earth fire dragons, Matthew led Bobo to see Suya. At this moment, the area around the throne had already regained its peace. The animals summoned by Suya had also left one after another, leaving behind one corpse after another on the ground. Rays of white light emerged from the corpse and merged into Suya's throne. It was extremely difficult for Suya to transform the souls of all animals into even the lowest level of nature soul. Even if she was already standing at the top of the rainforest, a large-scale promotion ceremony was still a big challenge for her before she became a demigod. Bobo walked over and sized up Suya curiously. She could not help but say enviously, "What white toes. Wow, you're really tall." To Matthew's surprise, Suya's attitude towards Bobo was unexpectedly calm. She smiled gently at Shorty. "Thank you. You're very cute too." Bobo jumped up excitedly. "Did you hear that, Matthew? Even the soul of the rainforest praised me for being cute. She really has good taste." Because she had just done a good job in boxing, Matthew couldn't be perfunctory, so he praised her a little. The blue light on Bobo's helmet was about to burst out from the light bulb. At this moment, Lumiere walked over. Suya suddenly became serious. She sat upright on the throne, and her temperament instantly changed from an amiable big sister next door to a high and mighty queen. They took the verdant branch. That black-robed man, Blinken of the Dragon Lich cult, used the Book of Blasphemy to weaken my power and forcefully pried open the door to the Black Banyan dream. He perfectly seized the moment when I was at my weakest. Before that, I was preparing the advancement ritual of the war beasts. The ritual hadn't succeeded yet, and I had lost a lot of energy, so I gave them an opportunity. As soon as she finished speaking, 2 rings of white light lit up on the altar in front of the throne. Everyone focused their eyes. Lying in the white light were the phantoms of dinosauruses and winged dragon wind gods that had shrunk many times. Matthew understood. The war beast was a supernatural soul of nature. Only Lord-tier monsters that tore apart all competitors and crushed their peers in the natural world had the chance to become a war beast. Using the dinosauruses as an example, after they were promoted to war beasts by Suya, they became the guardians of the Black Banyan's dream realm. It could survive for as long as the Black Banyan's dream realm could. At the same time, war beasts could retain most of their strength when they were alive. They even had the opportunity to reconstruct their physical bodies, unlike most natural souls that existed in the form of spirits, which always had some defects since they lacked a physical body. Correspondingly, the promotion of war beasts consumed a lot of energy for the host of the ceremony, not to mention Suya was promoting 2 at the same time. Matthew looked straight into Suya's eyes, but the latter's expression did not change. However, Matthew realized that Suya might have predicted the impending crisis, which was why she had allowed the 2 lords, the winged dragon wind god and the dinosauruses, to die in his and Lumire's hands. Because only then would she have the opportunity to hold the war beast advancement ceremony for them. In hindsight, there was nothing wrong with this choice. Since Blinken could directly pry open the door to the Black Banyan's dream, all of this had nothing to do with the rainforest's ecological niche in the material world. It could only be said that Blinken had been plotting for a long time, and he was very decisive, seizing the opportunity perfectly. Matthew was about to ask for some details when he suddenly felt a pain in the back of his foot as if someone had stepped on him heavily. However, the control of his strength was extremely perfect, causing Matthew to feel a slight pain, but not to the extent of screaming. After the pain, there was a small numbness. Matthew frowned as he stared at Suya. The latter's gaze was calm, and her aura was dignified, as if she was a god that was accepting believers on a pilgrimage. When Matthew saw this, he began to wonder if she was the one who had stepped on him. However, this was Black Banyan's dream realm. Who else could it be other than her? What exactly is the Book of Blasphemy? Fortunately, his friend Bobo asked Matthew's question. The Book of Blasphemy is a true divine artifact. In theory, Blinken only has 1/5 of it, so it can only have the effect of a semi-divine artifact. 50 years ago, this semi-divine weapon was still hidden in a secret vault of the Seven Saint Alliance. However, at that time, Blinken was already one of the guards of the secret vault. He had long coveted the remnant page of the Book of Blasphemy, so he deliberately designed a series of schemes. In the end, he successfully escaped with the remnant page and went to the Dragon Lich cult. The one who answered everyone's questions was not Suya. It was a young man who was slowly walking out from the shadows under the banyan tree. He was very thin and short. His skin was dark, but his teeth were very white. When he smiled, he gave people a very shy feeling. Hi, everyone. My name is Zai, and I'm from the Secret Intelligence Department of the Seven Saint Alliance. I'm an ace spy, and my job is to keep an eye on the Dragon Lich cult in the desert. I stutter a little. I get nervous when people look at me. Thank you. Zai finished the 2 sentences as if he were reciting his lines. Suya helped to introduce him. I've known Zai for many years. He was always active in the desert. Before the Dragon Lich cult attacked, he came to warn me, but Blinken came too quickly, giving me less than an hour to react. Zai turned his head and didn't look at anyone. He said smoothly. It's not your fault, Master Suya. Blinken is the 3rd most powerful person in the Dragon Lich cult. His strength is unbelievably strong, and no one knows that he will suddenly go crazy. Everyone, if you don't mind, let me introduce the background of the Dragon Lich cult first. The group of people were curious, to begin with, so they naturally nodded. Only Matthew's nod was a little slow. Because just now, he felt another foot rubbing against the back of his foot. This time, it wasn't a stomp. But it seemed more torturous than stepping. Is it Suya? What is this woman doing? She has just lost her verdant branch, she can't be in the mood to flirt with me. Matthew's mind was in a mess. However, he soon listened attentively. The Dragon Lich cult originated from the worship of the dragon of the dead, Ariana, but in fact, Ariana hated them very much. She once personally said to the person in charge of negotiating with the Alliance of Seven Saints, If it's possible, I hope that I'm the only Dracon Lich in this world. I enjoy loneliness and don't yearn for my own kind because having too many of my own kind means competition. I'd rather lie in my grave every day and count flies than have a few more dragon liches in the world. Although this sentence was said in the context of Ariana trying to distance herself from the dragon worship sect, we think it has a certain degree of authenticity. Ariana was just a spiritual icon used by the Dragon Lich cult to attract believers. Their real leader was actually a mage named Isabel. Speaking of which, I have no choice but to reveal my family's dirty laundry. Lady Isabel, as the teacher of the current Guardian of the South, Mr. Ronan, was once the previous generation's heavenly mage of the Seven Saint Alliance. Her level was above level 30, which was also the legendary Holy Mage. Yes, she was a traitor of the Seven Saint Alliance. This was also one of the reasons why the Seven Saint Alliance had yet to destroy the Dragon Lich sect. We don't know why the former heavenly mage and the guardian of the human race betrayed us. Fortunately, although Isabel was crazy, she was not too evil. The Alliance had paid a huge price to stop her. After a few difficult battles, we eliminated a considerable number of members of the Dragon Lich sect. Isabel was also convinced and took the initiative to confine herself. The Alliance's higher-ups had people accompanying her day and night. We could say that her mental state is still okay. The Dragon Lich sect that we're looking at now is mainly controlled by two mages. They were once Lady Isabel's favorite students. Blinken, whom I'm monitoring, is mainly responsible for the activities of this cult in the south. He was very cunning and appeared and disappeared like a ghost. The Alliance sent people to capture him a few times, but he escaped. This time, I caught a clue about him. I only dared to hide in the dark and wait for the follow-up orders from my superiors. According to my observations, before attacking the rainforest, Blinken had been in the desert. He had been patiently chatting with the Blue Dragon every day, trying to persuade it to join the Dragon Lich sect after its life was exhausted. However, the Blue Dragon was only greedy for the money of the Dragon Lich sect. It refused to sign the contract after receiving money several times. Blinken was already very angry. However, Blue Dragon was shameless, timid, and cautious. He could not do anything to him. Blinken was indeed quite capable. While he was dealing with the Blue Dragon in the desert, he did not forget to set up the Dragon Lich sect's businesses in the city. He was very business-minded. Casinos, brothels, magic shops. Under his management, the Dragon Lich sect's businesses flourished. Many local tyrants in the Gold Coast tried to find trouble with them, but in the end, they could not do anything. He spent most of his time in the desert fighting the Blue Dragon. This was truly admirable. I thought this situation would continue until Blue Dragon or Blinken made their move. However, some time ago, I received a message from an insider from the Dragon Lich sect. He told me that a member of the Dragon Lich sect was in a tavern in Condor City when he accidentally heard a drunkard say that they had found a giant dragon's tomb in the rainforest and that they were going to be rich. The member of the Dragon Lich sect verified that the drunkard was a mid-level leader of the Sandstorm Bandits. Ever since that day, the Sandstorm Bandits began to have internal strife. After that, Blinken asked around and somehow concluded that there was a dragon's tomb in the rainforest. After all, the Book of Blasphemy had records on how to advance as dragon liches. One requires a large number of dead dragon skeletons. The news of the dragon's tomb directly stimulated Blinken. He almost immediately gave the order to temporarily give up on negotiating with the Blue Dragon and mobilized a large amount of resources to the edge of the rainforest. He was cutting down trees and building factories. They probably knew that they would encounter resistance from the rainforest creatures and were prepared to fight to the death with you. The tomb of the giant dragon. Matthew and the other two looked at each other, feeling somewhat baffled. He recalled the members of the Order of Calamity and the Sandstorm Bandits who had appeared at the shore of the Great Dragon Lake that day. He couldn't help but wonder if Blinken had made a mistake. Could he have mistaken the bright Sandalwood King's tomb for the tomb of the giant dragon? This is too ridiculous. Matthew thought about it, and the strange feeling on his calf came again. After trying to adjust his posture and move forward and backward to no avail, he could only use his willpower to resist the numbness in his calves forcefully. On the throne, Suya rested her chin on one hand and crossed her legs. Her left leg was stacked on top of her swade, and her fair little foot unconsciously pressed forward. Her expression was innocent and holy. This made Matthew speechless. He did not understand why Suya did this, so he could only silently endure the humiliation. In short, according to my intelligence, the Dragon Lich sect has temporarily allied with the Order of Calamity from the Underdark. The two sides have reached a certain agreement, and the people of the Order of Calamity seem to be very interested in the legendary Tomb of the Dragon. Zai said with assurance. As for the situation with the Sandstorm Bandits, I don't know. At this point, his expression and tone became very sincere. No matter what, Blinken's actions must be stopped. Not to mention what will happen when he finds the dragon's tomb. Before that, the safety of the rainforest creatures and the Black Banyan Dream will be in huge danger. According to the procedure, this matter should have been handled by my superior. However, there has been some kind of malfunction in the Alliance recently, and all communication rituals can't be used. I'm just a spy without combat power. I had no choice but to ask for help from others. Now, I officially represent the Alliance of Seven Saints to entrust you with a task. Can you help stop Blinken's actions? It would be even better if you could kill him or capture him. The Alliance of Seven Saints has never been stingy with rewards. I can guarantee that after the mission is successful, you will at least receive a magical equipment or item with a rating of L2 or above. Matthew was about to agree. However, he heard a delicate voice beside his ear. Don't do it. Like and subscribe.